Retirement can give you something you have wanted for most of your adult life. Time. No alarm forcing you out of bed, no commute, no manager waiting for an answer, no calendar packed with meetings. At first, that freedom can feel almost unreal. Then something strange can happen. The days become less distinct. Monday doesn't feel very different from Thursday. You have nowhere you absolutely need to be, so there is always tomorrow. A few weeks become a few months, and suddenly you realize that you have been extremely busy doing almost nothing that truly challenges you. That is where retirement can become a very different experience from the one you imagined. Because the greatest danger after leaving work may not be having too little to do. It may be having nothing that requires you to become more. And the Stoics had a remarkably useful answer to that problem. They would not have asked you how to stay entertained. They would have asked, what kind of person are you still becoming? Because your working life may be finished, but your development doesn't have to be. And today we're going to look at 7 hobbies that can help you build a stronger second chapter after 60. Not by pretending you're 30 again, but by protecting the things that make life worth living at any age. And stay with me, because the final one changes the way you look at every year you have left. Most people prepare carefully for retirement. They think about money, healthcare, where they'll live, what they'll finally have time to do. But there is another question that receives far less attention. What will give your days structure when your job no longer does? For decades, work may have quietly answered that question for you. You knew when to wake up. You knew where you needed to be. People expected things from you. You solved problems. You learned. You dealt with difficult people. You made decisions. Even when you disliked your job, it gave your life a rhythm. Then one day, the rhythm stops. This is why retirement isn't simply a financial transition. It's an identity transition. And that is where Stoicism becomes useful. The Stoics repeatedly return to a simple idea. You cannot command everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you meet it. You cannot negotiate with age. You cannot stop time. You cannot make your body behave exactly as it did decades ago. But you can decide whether the years ahead become passive years or purposeful ones. So let's look at 7 activities that aren't merely ways to occupy your afternoon. They are ways of keeping different parts of yourself alive. Fangirl 1. Choose one discipline that makes you use time well. This final hobby isn't one specific activity. That's intentional. It could be long-distance walking, swimming, cycling, photography, travel, birdwatching, writing, martial arts, volunteering, learning an instrument, building things. Anything that requires consistent commitment and gives you a reason to keep showing up. The important word is discipline. Not obsession, not punishment. Discipline. Something you continue doing even when the excitement disappears. Why put this at number 1? Because the greatest benefit of a long-term pursuit isn't the activity itself. It's what the activity does to your relationship with time. When you're young, 5 years can feel enormous. At 65, you understand differently. You know that seasons disappear. People change. Children grow, friends move, parents are gone, opportunities close, your body changes. And eventually, you begin to understand something the Stoics considered central to a good life. You don't own tomorrow. You only have the opportunity to use today. That isn't supposed to frighten you. It's supposed to wake you up. Think about the difference between 2 sentences. I have plenty of time, and I have today. The first encourages postponement. The second encourages participation. A disciplined hobby creates participation. You have somewhere to go, something to practice, something to improve, someone to meet, something to build. A reason to put your phone down and enter the world. And slowly, your calendar starts changing. The days stop becoming empty spaces between appointments. They become chapters. That is the deeper meaning behind living deliberately after 60. You're not trying to defeat age. You are refusing to surrender your attention to it. Handlungsgrund 2. Teach what life has already taught you. By 60, 65, 70 or beyond, you possess something no younger person can manufacture overnight. Experience. You have made decisions. You've made mistakes. You've watched people succeed. You've watched people fail. You've dealt with disappointment. You've probably learned things that took decades to understand. The tragedy is that much of that knowledge can disappear with you if you never pass it on. That's why mentoring may be one of the most meaningful activities available after retirement. And it doesn't have to be formal. You could help a younger person understand your profession. Teach a grandchild how to repair something. Help someone starting a small business. Volunteer, tutor, coach. Teach music, teach cooking. Share stories with context instead of simply telling people how things used to be. The important distinction is this. Don't simply tell younger people what you know. Help them learn how to think. That changes the relationship. You are no longer simply remembering your past. You're contributing to someone else's future. And something interesting happens when you teach. You discover gaps in your own understanding. A young person asks a question you never considered. They approach an old problem differently. Suddenly, your experience meets their perspective. That isn't becoming obsolete. That's remaining part of the conversation. The Stoics placed enormous importance on human beings contributing to one another. A person isn't valuable only because of their job title. Your usefulness can change form. You may no longer manage a department, but perhaps you can guide one young person. You may no longer run a business, but perhaps you can help someone build theirs. You may no longer be responsible for a team, but perhaps you can become the person someone calls when they don't know what to do. And that brings us to the final practice. Because eventually, every retirement question comes back to one unavoidable fact. Time is limited. 3. Keep a private janitor. Retirement removes something many people don't realize they had: external accountability. When you worked, there were deadlines, performance reviews, responsibilities, people depending on you, consequences. After retirement, much of that disappears. Nobody may notice if you waste an entire morning. Nobody may ask whether you kept yesterday's promise to yourself. That freedom can be wonderful. It can also become dangerous. This is where journaling becomes more than recording what happened during your day. Use it as a private examination. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I act well today? Not where did I make money? Not where did people praise me? Where did I show patience, courage, restraint, honesty, or kindness? Second, where did I fall short? Did irritation control you? Did you avoid something difficult? Did you spend hours doing something you knew was unhelpful? And third, what one thing I will do differently tomorrow? Only one. Because the purpose isn't to punish yourself. It's to improve yourself. Marcus Aurelius left behind a remarkable example of this kind of private reflection. His writings weren't originally created as a motivational product for future generations. They were personal reminders, messages to himself about how he wanted to think and behave. That is an important distinction. Your journal doesn't need to impress anyone. Nobody needs to read it. Its value comes from the honesty you are willing to put into it. 10 minutes a night can create something retirement often lacks: a sense that you are still working on yourself. And that leads directly to another question. What happens when your personal growth becomes useful to someone besides you? Hangonder 4. Gardening. Learn to work with reality. A garden is a strange kind of teacher. You can do everything correctly and still lose the crop. You can water, plant, prune, protect, prepare the soil, and then the weather changes. A plant fails, a pest arrives, something you expected to bloom doesn't, and something you almost ignored becomes the strongest thing in the garden. That is an excellent lesson in Stoic thinking. There are things you can influence, and there are things you cannot command. Your job is not to control the entire garden. Your job is to care for what is yours to care for. That principle applies far beyond gardening. You can influence your health habits. You cannot control every health outcome. You can be kind to your family. You cannot control how they respond. You can prepare carefully. You cannot can the future. You can make plans. You cannot guarantee results. Gardening makes this philosophy physical. You put your hands into something real, do the work available to you, and then accept that nature gets the final vote. And there is another reason gardening can be powerful after retirement. Something is waiting for you tomorrow. That sounds small. It isn't. A life without obligations can eventually become a life without anticipation. A garden gives you both responsibility and anticipation. Something needs attention. Something is changing. Something is growing. And eventually, something may need you to simply leave it alone. That last part is important too. Not everything improves because you interfere with it. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when to act. Sometimes it is knowing when to wait. But there is one practice that can teach you to examine your own behavior with the same honesty. And this one doesn't require a garden, workshop, or gym. It requires a notebook. Hobbies 5. Build something that didn't exist before. There is a special satisfaction in creating something tangible. You start with nothing, then gradually something exists because you spent your time making it. It could be a wooden shelf, a meal, a garden bed, a painting, A piece of furniture, a photograph, a handmade gift, a model, a book. It doesn't need to be impressive, it needs to be yours. Why does this matter after retirement? Because modern life allows us to consume almost everything without producing much ourselves. You can spend hours watching someone else cook, someone else travel, someone else build, someone else play music, someone else live. And at the end of the day, you may have consumed hundreds of images without creating a single thing. Craftsmanship reverses that relationship. You become the person who makes. And making teaches a lesson that philosophy alone sometimes struggles to teach. Progress is usually invisible while it is happening. A piece of wood doesn't become a table because you feel motivated one morning. You measure, cut, adjust, make mistakes, start again. Eventually, something takes shape. That process can become a quiet education in patience. And patience becomes increasingly valuable when life itself refuses to move according to your schedule. Which brings us to something that teaches patience better than almost anything humans have invented. Nature. Hungry. 6. Learn something you are bad at. One of the most uncomfortable experiences after a long career is becoming a beginner again. For decades, you may have been competent. People came to you because you knew what you were doing. You understood your profession. You knew how to solve problems. Then retirement arrives, and suddenly you are in a position where nobody needs your expertise every morning. There's an answer to that. Become a beginner voluntarily. Learn photography, a musical instrument, a language, painting, history, technology, cooking, writing, chess. Anything that makes you occasionally say, "I don't know how to do this yet." That sentence is valuable. Because learning something unfamiliar forces you to abandon the comfortable identity of the expert. And there is something deeply Stoic about that humility. Epictetus repeatedly emphasized that recognizing what you don't know is part of becoming wiser. You don't need every new skill to become useful. Some things can simply make you curious again. Imagine being 68 and learning to play piano. Your first attempt may sound terrible. Good. That means your brain has encountered something it cannot perform automatically. You are paying attention. You are correcting mistakes. You are remembering. You are improving. And perhaps most importantly, you are giving yourself a reason to look forward to tomorrow. That's the point. A meaningful retirement needs some activities that are unfinished, something you're still learning, something you haven't mastered. Because an entirely completed life would be a strangely lifeless thing. But learning isn't the only way to regain that feeling of capability. Sometimes you need to make something you can actually hold in your hands. Hongro. 7. Move for independence, not appearance. There comes a point when exercise needs a different definition. When you're 25, you may exercise because you want to look a certain way. Later in life, the question becomes much more important. Can I still do what I want to do? Can you walk comfortably, carry your groceries, get up from the floor, climb stairs, travel, play with your grandchildren, work in the garden, explore a new city? These aren't cosmetic questions, they're independence questions. That makes walking, swimming, cycling, tai chi, strength training, dancing, or another appropriate physical activity far more than a hobby. It becomes a declaration of independence. And there is a Stoic lesson hidden inside that. Don't train your body to prove that you haven't aged. Train it to make the body you have today more capable. That distinction matters. You don't need to compete with your younger self. Your younger self has already disappeared. The person you are today is the person you have to work with. And that is exactly where Stoicism begins. Reality before fantasy. A useful habit is to choose one physical activity you genuinely enjoy and make it part of your weekly identity. Not, "I should exercise." Instead, "I am someone who moves." That is a much stronger identity. And it leads to the next hobby, because physical capability isn't enough. Your mind needs somewhere to go to. Glower. Let's step back for a moment. We started with retirement. Then we talked about movement, learning, creating, gardening, reflection, mentoring, and disciplined pursuit. But notice what these activities actually protect. Movement protects independence. Learning protects curiosity. Creating protects capability. Gardening teaches acceptance. Journaling develops self-command. Mentoring creates contribution, and disciplined pursuit gives you perspective about time. That is why simply asking, "What hobby should I pick up after retirement?" may be the wrong question. A better question is, "What part of myself needs to remain in training?" If you feel physically weaker, choose something that develops movement. If your days feel mentally repetitive, learn something difficult. If you feel that you're no longer creating, build something. If you struggle to accept what has changed, spend time in nature. If your days lack structure, begin a reflective ritual. If you feel less useful, teach. If you find yourself postponing life, choose a discipline that demands your presence. Now, retirement starts looking different. It isn't simply an ending, it's a redesign. Hand rulers. There is a dangerous assumption hidden inside the way society sometimes talks about aging. We imagine that life has a peak. You study, you work, you raise a family, you achieve things. Then eventually the meaningful part is over and the rest is maintenance. But human beings don't work quite that neatly. Your later years can contain something your younger years often lacked: perspective. You know yourself better. You know what isn't worth arguing about. You know how quickly circumstances change. You know that some ambitions weren't worth the price. You know which relationships matter. You know that time spent with the people you love is not a small thing. And if you combine that perspective with discipline, curiosity, and contribution, your later years don't have to become a watered-down version of your earlier life. They can become a different kind of life altogether, perhaps. Slower in certain ways, certainly, but also more deliberate, more selective, more honest. The goal isn't to become the person you were at 30. The goal is to become the person you are capable of becoming now. That is a very different ambition. Hand rule and so. Don't try all 7 tomorrow. Pick one, just one. If you need more movement, choose your activity. If you've stopped learning, find something you've always wanted to understand. If you miss creating, make something with your hands. If you need patience, spend time cultivating something. If your days have lost structure, start the journal. If you miss being useful, find someone you can teach. And if you have been postponing something because you keep telling yourself there will be plenty of time, choose one meaningful pursuit and begin. Not next month, not when everything is perfect. Begin with a small version of it this week. Because the Stoic answer to aging was never to pretend that time wasn't passing. It was to stop wasting the time that remained. And perhaps that is the most useful way to think about retirement. You are not being asked to prove that you are still young. You are being given the opportunity to decide what kind of older person you will become. Someone who consumes the years, or someone who continues to participate in them. Someone who waits for life to provide another purpose, or someone who creates one. Someone who looks backward and says, "That was when my life mattered." Or someone who can look at the years ahead and say, "There is still something here worth building." If one of these ideas gave you something to think about, choose one and tell yourself what it is. And if you want more practical Stoic ideas for building a stronger mind, stronger habits, and a more deliberate life, consider subscribing. Not because you need another thing to watch, but because the goal is to make the things you watch useful after the screen goes dark. Your working life may have ended. Your usefulness has not. Your capacity to learn has not. Your ability to contribute has not. And your opportunity to live deliberately has not. The next chapter doesn't have to be the quietest chapter. It can be the most intentional one.